And now I also probably, am I wrong seeing you more on the conservative side, but not a total Trump supporter or so, not in that. But in Canada, for example, who do you support, a politician
Mm.
or a political party?
There's not too much in Canada. I would say in Canada, the one thing that is interesting is that there's one particular province currently, since the provincial system, the way that Canada is run as a Canadian system, is that the provinces have an immense amount of authority
Mm,
outside of, like you can have a foreign treaty with another government as a province,
mm,
bypassing the federal government if you wanted to. Now, most of the time, the system is so self managed because there's a built-in deep state around the Privy Council office, the lieutenant governors, the governor generals, the entire there's an entire shadow government built baked into the Canadian system that usually manages to keep things relatively self-managed. So there's very little need to intervene as an empire to keep the ship moving in a certain direction. Sometimes there's disruptive things. What I'm noticing is that because I think of there's a certain moral blue collar culture in the farming areas of the prairies and especially Alberta, very big in natural gas, energy, farming, ranchers. So people who do things, they're not so much tied to the urban, blue collar or white collar corruptive influences of cosmopolitanism, which tends to happen unfortunately in our type of world. That's where the cultural corruption tends to be located in the urban zones, which is where we see the bursts of LGBT XYZ hyper liberalism. There are no truths. Everything you feel is a truth. That sort of
yeah,
thing tends to start in the urban and then emanate outwards.
yeah.
Whereas people who do real things in the real world have access to what we could call common sense. That's why Socrates, in his dialogues, always appreciated so much talking to carpenters and shoemakers, so much more than the leading sophists and lawyers and philosophers and politicians of his day they were much more eloquent and they had much more abstract knowledge at their disposal, but they didn't really know what they didn't know. They were self-deluded. Whereas the shoemaker or the carpenter, they might not know a lot of abstract theory, but what they do know, they
Hmm.
know, and it gives
Yeah,
them a power of judging. Okay, the Great Reset is out to kill my family.
yeah.
I got to do something. So you've
So
got this.
you trust, the little people, the people who work with their hands, the farmers who have practical knowledge, and of course in the political sphere there are not many who make a career there. It's usually lawyers or people even who studied politics in
Yeah,
university that go into politics without ever
yeah,
having had a real job. So am I right to
yeah.
am I thinking that you don't really vote always for the same party? You're also kind of like somewhere in the middle, maybe libertarian. If they will be popular, they will never get a majority, of course, but usually also in the US now you have to probably vote again, Biden or Trump, and it keeps repeating. Maybe Clinton, maybe Obama his dynasty will come, but it's usually, you could even say it's worthless, it's useless to vote. It's more like in your community, in your neighborhood, where you can really make a
Yeah.
difference at the
Well,
moment.
it's sort of both. Like it's top down and bottom up. But we're
Hmm.
often again, just like I was brainwashed to be like you have to be left brained or right brained. If you're an engineer, you don't let your emotions contaminate what
Yeah,
you know
never
is
be
cold logic.
conservative, always liberal. Strive
Yeah,
for
yeah, and,
total
and
freedom of
the
expression.
artists are liberals, the engineers are conservative, blah blah blah. But so the same sort of thing in parties and voting too, or up top down, bottom up. Like are you a bottom up person who thinks about your community, or do you only care about the cold hard logical rules of society? Pick a side, and it's like no, it's a bit of both. And like there is a person named Daniela Smith for the United Conservative Party in Alberta currently, who is the premier, and she has a lot of enemies with the leading Malthusian technocrats who are very much control Ottawa, including all parties in Ottawa, as far as I see, are all controlled by the same Davos clique. But on the provincial level, you had the farmers, a lot of the blue collar people, the people with common sense, who organized the trucker convoy in Canada, which was a very positively disruptive process that did have global reverberations. That was a purely Alberta phenomenon that was organized, and then it awoke something within the rest of the provinces that went along and realized that this is what needs to be done. So there's that. On a federal level, like I said, I do encourage people to vote, but more than vote is to participate in committees, participate in the process, in town hall meetings,
Yeah.
organize networks of learning and action. But don't go to action without first really taking the time to understand the topography of the terrain, which is a problem I see. A lot of good people, they act out of um, fear of tyranny of evil, and they act too soon and find themselves not understanding what they're operating in and getting swept into narratives that see them becoming champions of bombing Iran. You know, a lot of good people right now are falling right into this stupid narrative created for
Hmm.
them of
Hmm.
saying, yes, we have to bomb Iran, which is supporting Hamas, or we have to save the Taiwanese people who love democracy from the big bad Chinese. We have to support the program, even if it means going to war with China, or we have to support the poor Ukrainian democracy lovers. And these are a lot of good people who mean well, but they don't understand how the system, how they're being played like a violin. And so they're acquiescing to actions that are going to ultimately lead to their own self destruction. So that's what I'm saying. Like it has to be combination, both learning, education, and action at the same time, and do that and see it more process oriented, not like a formula where I can just vote, not think about it, then maybe vote 4 years from now, not
Yeah.
think about it. It's an
That's also
ongoing living
that's
thing.
also passivity. If you only just think I just need to vote every four
Yeah,
years, or in Switzerland we have referendums at least, and there's a
yeah,
little more participation, but it's usually about detail policies that
yeah,
like when there's a corona dictatorship going on, you can all the rules, all the human rights are thrown out of the window,
yeah.
and then you either then sit in your room or go to demonstrate, and maybe you get a fine. So it's still kind of like you said, now things in Europe, and I think also in Canada and USA, we don't have this dictatorship, and now is the time to really get active in your community. So I think
Mm.
that's a good advice. We don't have that much time left anymore. I would love it if you could describe your movie that we can watch on YouTube, the America's Secret Police. What kind of
Ah, yes.
figures do you describe, and how did you come up with this idea? That's also interesting. Was
Well,
it your
this
idea,
is
or your wife's idea?
Yeah, that's my wife's. So we've been collaborating also with a talented filmmaker based in the Yukon, Jason Dahl, who's been has just immense amount of talent and has helped us make a lot of our written works into multimedia productions. Because admittedly, you know, a lot of the people we were finding who were reading our stuff were somewhat older. And that's from the older generation of people above 60, 70, 80 have a different experience, a different education system that encouraged literacy. The younger generation, below 30 especially, there's a lack of literary muscle.
And
So we're like,
attention span.
attention span. Twitter did a lot of damage. The 3 minute music videos, things like that. A lot of things. The whole drug culture. There's a lot of things going against the young millennials now. So we're like, well, we have to inspire them to want to read. So the multimedia documentary thing was a very important thing that we cherish. So we've made a lot of our research into videos, and the last one that you mentioned was in a certain sense something my wife had written, going through, well, what is the secret police, what is the FBI, what is the CIA, what are these intelligence agencies animated by? Because you can't avoid, if you're an honest researcher, walking into occult freemasonic operations left and right, no matter what part of history you're looking at. If you're digging into causality, what made the French Revolution? What was behind the Bolshevik Revolution? Or what was behind the Federal Reserve? You can't avoid it, right? Or the murder of many great leaders. There's secret societies. So what is that? What do they think? What do they believe in? What is this? So that video took a broad step back, looking at how there's a direct continuity from the ancient world pre-Christian and the various mystery cults that were controlled by priesthoods around certain controlled deities that were used for both intelligence, banking, functions, geopolitical manipulations, where everybody of different kingdoms would go, whether you're in Anatolia or whether you're in Greece or whether you're in Sparta or whether you're in Egypt. You would, as a general, as a whatever, as a king of whatever, a little tyrant of whatever area, you would pay a lot of money to get the cult of Apollo at Delphi, is one big one that was used back then, to tell you what to do. What does Apollo say through the voice of an oracle that sputters random things out, interpreted by a priesthood, and the priesthood of initiates who have been through a certain set of controlled experiences, often with psychedelic drugs. The cult of Eleusis was a big part of that, to process people and talent search to find those who would be the most useful, enthusiastic participants of the priesthood, the higher
Hmm.
managerial elite,
They
who
were
would
they
then
were
tell,
worshipped as psychics, as holy
yeah,
people who have some kind of
yeah,
a vision, and can also, it's basically they can help the powerful people, or the people who want to become more powerful. So I think
mhm.
this this desire for power is something that old old people, maybe sometimes with Edgar Hoover, he started very early in his career, and his really
Yeah.
concentration to become almost like the most powerful, or more powerful than the president. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
that's right. Yeah, yeah, and we do spend a lot of time going through Hoover and the FBI. And Hoover, his identity was, I mean, they made him work for it, of course. He was a simple-minded, transvestite who had a lot to be ashamed of. He had a lot of issues with his mother, psychological profile that made him perfect. He just wanted to be somebody that matters, that could be a that could have like a divine purpose. He just wanted it so badly. So they made him work for like 40 years in the system to become, finally, they gave him, they made him a 33rd degree Freemason finally, but he lived for it since he was 17, coming out of law school, working with Palmer, doing these Palmer raids after World War One. And the whole FBI. So we go through the origins of the FBI, under Teddy Roosevelt, under Woodrow Wilson, set up as a Freemasonic, basically a Freemasonic secret policing operation, overseen, effectively by the what became Britain's MI6. Um, this the Hoover was somebody whose role was to carry out what Albert Pike, who we also talk about quite a bit. Albert Pike created the Scottish Rite, or at least amplified the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in a very serious way, and literally, also created, or played a key role creating the what became the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. He was a Confederate general, a devoted disciple of Giuseppe Mazzini, one of the
Mhm.
key figures as a high level Freemason who created the first international way back in the 19th century to organize effectively the global revolution, using what he called the Young Europe movement, young Switzerland, young Albania, young Turks, young everything. There was a young America, young Canada, basically taking alienated, disenfranchised, mostly young and poor people, and then weaponizing mobs to become champions of what they think of as their freedom, but in reality, they're actually being used to destroy the institutions of whatever national government that the oligarchy wants to undermine, whether the Ottoman Empire, whether Germany, whether whatever. And
So
then
Edgar Hoover reminds me a little bit of the open society stuff of Soros, no?
it's a controlled opposition. He literally did believe very devoutly that there was a communist conspiracy. Like, he was not in on the inner the big joke. He was not respected enough to be on the inside joke. He really did believe that there, like, he understood that there was a conspiracy to destroy America. In my assessment of him, my wife's assessment, he seems to authentically think that. He knows he's compromised. He knows he's that's why he's working with the mafia. He's going to these different orgies.
Hmm.
He's embraced now his dual split personality. But he does believe in his Apollonian, not Dionysian, because that's the way it works. The splitting of the personality is around the Apollo Dionysius uh, cult, where you have to be stoic in the daytime, right, and act like you're a virtuous person in the daytime, in an Apollonian sort of stoic setting, and then at night you can be the revelry debaucherer who goes to think about clubs on a Friday night, you know, where
Yeah.
you're popping ecstasy, you're having sex with strangers, whatever. And that's sort of the way that the breaking of the personality has been used, and he definitely exemplifies that. So he did believe that this conspiracy existed, and it did, to infiltrate and undo his nation from within. But he believed, as did many followers of the John Birch Society and others that or collaborators with the John Birch Society, that it was purely a communistic plot and nothing more. And he saw John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. as communist agents, which is why he played a big role in as a collaborator in the murder of America's leaders. And we go through several of them in the course of that documentary, including a man Franklin Roosevelt wanted, an ally of Roosevelt who was supposed to be the Attorney General in 1933, whose name was Senator Thomas Walsh, an arch nemesis of Hoover, who said, "Once I'm made Attorney General in '33, once Roosevelt is elected, I'm going to fire Hoover and purge the FBI." And he died on the train the day he was supposed to be inaugurated. And there was many other cases of senators, congressmen who were murdered by Hoover's operation because he thought, "Oh, they're commies, and we have to kill them."
Yeah,
So he was a useful
wasn't there
idiot.
one politician, a Democrat, who was in the Warren Commission, and then he later fired Hoover, and then he was also probably assassinated somewhere in an airplane. You
He
remember?
was Hale Boggs. Hale
Hale Box,
Boggs
yeah,
was a congressman, and who's the one who was the dissenting voice in the Warren Commission that had been run
yeah.
by Allen Dulles that JFK fired. And Dulles was part of the cover up of Kennedy's murder, and probably also a planner of it. And Hale Boggs was organizing with the Attorney General under Nixon, who'd just come into power, to purge the FBI again and fire Hoover. And his plane disappeared. They never found his body or the plane before any of that could be carried out. And Hoover ended up enduring for a few more years before he died.
Okay, everybody watch the free, at the moment it's still free YouTube movie. I think just 30 minutes. America's Secret Police, produced last year. And you learn, I think I didn't know how important J. Edgar Hoover was. He was with from the beginning of the FBI, when the CIA wasn't there yet. I think the FBI, the Bureau, as they also called it, was the secret police and the state police. So I think you did a great job there. So the time is running out. Thank you very much for this, like I really wish, this intense conversation. I hope we'll have another Zoom sometime.